At 0700 hours on October 4, 1943, Colonel Hubert Zemke stood on the concrete hardstand at RAF Halesworth, watching ground crews fuel 52 Republic P-47 Thunderbolts for a deep penetration bomber escort into Germany. Zemke was only 29 years old, with 6 months of combat experience and 4 confirmed aerial victories. Intelligence reports warned that the Luftwaffe had committed nearly 180 Focke-Wulf 190s and Messerschmitt 109s to defend the industrial targets scheduled for attack that morning. Every pilot climbing into a Thunderbolt cockpit understood the brutal mathematics of the mission. The P-47 weighed nearly 7 tons empty, while the German fighters weighed less than 4. In a turning fight, physics decided the outcome. The lighter aircraft turned faster, and the heavier aircraft died. Zemke's 56th Fighter Group had already lost 11 aircraft in their first 4 months of combat, with 4 pilots killed and 7 captured. German pilots mockingly called the Thunderbolt the Jug, short for Juggernaut, a flying tank that could not dogfight. American bomber crews saw the same reality. When Focke-Wulfs attacked, the P-47s could not stay with them through tight turns. Luftwaffe pilots confidently broke away from bomber formations, knowing the heavy American fighters would not follow them into vertical maneuvers. They were correct. On June 26, 1943, Zemke's group clashed with Jagdgeschwader 26 over France. Veteran German pilots flew literal circles around the Thunderbolts. 5 P-47s were shot down, and 4 American pilots were killed. Captain Robert Johnson barely made it home in an aircraft riddled with more than 200 cannon hits. His Thunderbolt survived, but the fight had been lost. The mathematics were unforgiving. At 15,000 feet, a Focke-Wulf 190 completed. A full turn in 22 seconds. A P-47 needed 28. 6 seconds in air combat meant death. 8th Air Force leadership watched the struggle closely and began planning to replace the Thunderbolt with the lighter, faster P-51 Mustang. 5 fighter groups were already scheduled to convert by the end of 1943. The P-47 program appeared to be a failed experiment, but Zemke knew something the Luftwaffe did not. Zemke had spent 2 years testing the Thunderbolt before the war. He understood its real strength. The P-47 could not turn, but it could dive. Its massive Pratt & Whitney R2800 double Wasp engine generated over 2,000 horsepower. Its thick wings and heavy frame remained stable at speeds that would tear German fighters apart. In a vertical dive, nothing in the Luftwaffe could catch it. Zemke stopped fighting the war the Germans expected. He built entirely new tactics around altitude, speed, and momentum. His doctrine was simple but absolute. Never turn with the enemy, dive from height, fire once, pass through, climb back to altitude, use height like currency, trade altitude for speed, speed for position, and position for survival. The 56th Fighter Group trained relentlessly through the summer of 1943, practicing high-speed gunnery passes, dive bombing, and strict energy management. Every pilot learned to think vertically, not horizontally. The bomber stream on October 4th flew at 22,000 feet. Zemke positioned his Thunderbolts at 30,000, 8,000 feet above the bombers. 8,000 feet of stored energy. German radar detected the Americans at 0930 hours, and Jagdgeschwader 1 and 26 scrambled 73 Focke-Wulfs to intercept. German pilots expected American escorts flying slowly alongside bombers. Instead, Zemke's fighters waited above them. At 0952, Zemke spotted the German formation assembling 15 miles ahead. He rolled his P-47 into a 70-degree dive. 51 Thunderbolts followed. Airspeed climbed past 400 miles per hour. The Germans never looked up. Zemke's first burst tore through a Focke-Wulf cockpit. 90 seconds of chaos followed. Thunderbolts screamed through the formation at speeds the Germans could not match. German pilots blacked out or lost wings trying to follow. One aircraft disintegrated mid-dive. By 1003 hours, the sky above the bombers was empty. 0 bombers were lost. The Thunderbolt had proven itself. October 1943 became the proving ground. Bremen, Münster, Wilhelmshaven, Schweinfurt. Every mission drew Luftwaffe resistance, and every mission ended the same way. Diving attacks, no turning fights, 0 bomber losses to fighters. By October 31st, the 56th Fighter Group had destroyed 39 German aircraft in 1 month, becoming the highest-scoring unit in the 8th Air Force, the Luftwaffe noticed. German intelligence labeled the new threat the American diving tactic. Emergency conferences were held across occupied Europe. Traditional German doctrine no longer worked. Zemke layered his squadrons vertically, ensuring altitude advantage against every attack direction. German controllers began avoiding areas where the 56th operated. In February 1944, modified external fuel tanks extended the P-47's range. Zemke calculated the solution with precision: climb heavy, burn external fuel, drop tanks over Holland, enter combat light. On February 20th, Big Week began. German fighters adapted, spreading into small formations. Combat fragmented, but the Thunderbolt speed saved its pilots. Bombers reached Leipzig. Fighters did not get through. On March 6, 1944, the impossible happened. American fighters escorted bombers to Berlin. Zemke led the first American fighters over the German capital. The Thunderbolts dove from 33,000 feet into the heart of the Luftwaffe. German formations shattered. Not a single bomber was lost to fighters during the attack. The escort had finally reached Hitler's doorstep. By June 1944, air superiority was absolute. On D-Day, the 56th Fighter Group destroyed German aircraft on the ground and in the air before they could reach the beaches. The Luftwaffe never recovered. Zemke transferred command in August, but his tactics had become doctrine. The group flew through the end of the war, finishing with more victories than any fighter group in the European theatre. The Thunderbolt, that could not dogfight, destroyed more enemy aircraft than any other American fighter, not because the plane changed, but because the thinking did. Zemke proved that understanding physics, respecting mathematics, and refusing to fight the enemy's battle could change history. By late 1943, the Luftwaffe understood something had fundamentally changed. German fighter controllers no longer spoke with confidence over the radio. Reports from surviving pilots repeated the same warning. American P-47s were no longer escorting bombers in tight formation. They were hunting. They waited above the bomber stream, invisible against the sun, then fell like steel from the sky. German doctrine, perfected over 4 years of war, depended on altitude advantage and diving. Attacks. Zemke had taken that doctrine, stripped it down to mathematics, and executed it better than its inventors. Emergency meetings were held across occupied Europe. Jagdgeschwader commanders studied gun camera footage and combat reports. The conclusion was terrifying. There was no counter. The Thunderbolts did not stay to fight. They did not slow down. They did not turn. German pilots could not force them into disadvantage. Attempts to lure P-47s into turning fights failed. When German fighters climbed, the Thunderbolts dove. When Germans dove, the Thunderbolts were already gone, climbing back to altitude. The Americans controlled when and how every engagement occurred. 8th Air Force leadership took notice. Other P-47 groups were not achieving the same results. Good pilots, solid leadership, but traditional tactics. The difference was Zemke. In December 1943, every P-47 group commander was ordered to attend a briefing at King's Cliff. For 4 hours, Zemke explained the numbers: weight, energy, speed, gravity. He told them the Thunderbolt could not be flown like other fighters. If they tried, pilots would keep dying. If they accepted reality, the aircraft would dominate the sky. The new doctrine was not invincible. On December 22, 1943, heavy cloud cover over Germany eliminated altitude advantage. German fighters attacked from inside the weather, stripping away the Thunderbolt's greatest strength. 8 P-47s were damaged. 1 pilot was killed, 2 captured. The lesson was clear. When forced low and slow, the P-47 lost its edge. But Northern Europe entered a long period of clear winter weather, and the Thunderbolt's moment returned. January and February 1944 became relentless. Mission after mission, longer distances, deeper penetration, higher stakes. Bomber losses declined dramatically. German fighters still rose, but fewer reached firing range. Many never reached the bombers at all. The Luftwaffe was bleeding experience faster than it could replace it. Veteran pilots died. New pilots arrived with minimal training. The imbalance grew worse every week. The air war was shifting, not because of new aircraft alone, but because American fighters had learned how to think. The Thunderbolt was no longer a failed experiment. It was a system, and the system worked. Chapter 10. Big Week. February 1944 brought the largest sustained air offensive of the war. Big Week. 6 consecutive days of maximum effort raids against German aircraft factories. Every bomber, every fighter, everything that could fly, flew. The goal was simple: destroy German fighter production and force the Luftwaffe into battle it could not win. The 56th Fighter Group flew all 6 days. Long missions, brutal engagements. German tactics evolved again, spreading fighters into small units, attacking from multiple directions. Combat became chaotic. Individual pilots found themselves alone, fighting multiple opponents. But the Thunderbolt's strengths remained. Speed saved lives. Altitude created opportunity. Energy management replaced instinct. German fighters failed to break through. Bombers reached targets. Factories burned. German aircraft output collapsed. The Luftwaffe was no longer defending Germany. It was surviving it. March 6, 1944, marked a line in history. Berlin, the capital of the Reich, previously unreachable by escort fighters. This time, Thunderbolts arrived with the bombers. Zemke led the first American fighters over the city. German defenses reacted instantly. Hundreds of fighters rose. Anti-aircraft fire filled the sky. The P-47s dove from extreme altitude, smashing German formations before they could organize. The Luftwaffe fought desperately, but fuel limits, pilot fatigue, and relentless pressure broke resistance. Not a single bomber was lost to fighter attack during the bomb run. American escorts had done what experts said was impossible. They stayed with the bombers. They protected them over Berlin. From that day forward, German fighter pilots knew the truth. There was no safe airspace left, not even above their capital. By mid-1944, air superiority belonged to the Allies. D-Day succeeded because German fighters never reached the beaches. The Thunderbolt, once dismissed as obsolete, dominated the battlefield. Zemke transferred command, but his system remained. Discipline, altitude, speed, refusal to dogfight. Every pilot understood the rules. Break them, and physics would punish you. The 56th Fighter Group finished the war with the highest victory total of any American fighter group in Europe. They flew the same aircraft from first mission to last. They proved aircraft do not win wars alone. Thinking does. The P-47 could not turn. Zemke accepted that truth, and by accepting it, he changed the air war forever.